NBA free agency is all but over. Everybody's pretty much on their teams. The draft, of course, is behind us. And now we look forward to the rest of Summer League and USA basketball, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But Bakari, welcome to the show. What we're going to do today, we're going to go through my preseason power rankings, just talk about it, and of course, go back and forth on where these teams could land in 2024. Shout out to the BR family for this one. If you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. We're going to kick off here with the very bottom tier, the capture the flag tier. Bakari, last year, this tier was called the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, right?
Yeah.
Actually, that was my second ever podcast here. I was talking about Victor Wembanyama. Crazy how much of a phenomenon he was. But Cooper Flag seems to be the consensus number one next year. First off, how you doing? Welcome to the show. You're on vacation right now, so thank you for joining us. And also, not only am I jealous about the vacation part, you have NCAA 25, man. How is life right now? It seems like you're always on the up.
Yeah, I'm not complaining, that's for sure. I got to play NCAA 25 right here in Florida. That's actually where I'm at right now, Orlando, Florida. It's the resort city of Florida, so I'm definitely not complaining. To all the NCAA fans out there, it is definitely worth the wait. So much to do, so much to get into, so much labbing to do. You really can't go wrong. You got to spend hours just to try and figure out what type of. You got to narrow down what top 25 playbooks you have, and it's going to take about 5 hours. It's going to take that long.
Yeah,
But
like Bakari, I get up at like 3:30 to work out, right? I
yeah,
was like, man, when I get back at 5, I was like, I'm just gonna spend my entire morning finding my playbook and just setting up
yeah,
my dynasty on Friday because I'm too cheap to buy the extra pre-order bundle. But uh fun times to look forward to, right? But
yeah, yeah,
let's get into it. Of course, you see the teams here in the capture the flag tier. These are the teams that I think are just they are either in a rebuilding stage or whatever the case is. They just need to kind of tank a little bit and get the number one pick. Get whoever, whether if it's Cooper Flag or whoever they think the number one pick is, you need to go after that guy. You need to get that franchise cornerstone. Washington is a mess. Right now they have Alex Sarr. They traded away Denny Abdia for a bag of chips or Malcolm Brogdon, in other words. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But they also have Bilal Coulibaly, who needs to take a step up. Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma are okay, right? Kuzma is a borderline all-star, I guess, if you want to say that, if we're being generous. Charlotte is Charlotte. LaMelo Ball can't stay healthy. Brooklyn traded away McCall. They extended Nick Claxton. Outside of Claxton, what really do they have outside of a legendary Cam Thomas season on the way? And Chicago, I want to see what happens with Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball. Are they going to get traded? Are they staying? Your thoughts about these four teams?
yeah. Like you said, it's capture the flag. These four teams are, at least going into the college basketball season. Like you said, Cooper Flag is the consensus number one pick, and his workout video. I know he was just working out with RJ Barrett the other day. He looked insane.
I didn't even see it.
Everybody who watched the Team USA scrimmage versus select team.
Mhm.
Cooper Flag looked like he belonged on that court. Looked like he could have played on Team USA. So he's full of talent. He's full of skill. Any of these four teams are, he's going to be the cornerstone of their franchise. But with that being said, this is also probably arguably, if not as deep as a draft, a little bit deeper of a draft than that Wemby draft. Wemby, that draft. It was Wemby, Scoot, and Brandon Miller. And then after that, it was kind of like,
Yeah, you got a lot of solid pieces. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think this draft, you have Ace Bailey, at least going into the year, like I said, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, BJ Edgecombe. He just played for the Bahamas national team. So, I think this draft class is coming up. It's going to be full of really good pieces for rebuilding teams to kind of push into that next tier of teams, especially like the Hornets, who already have a star guard. If they can get maybe like a BJ Edgecombe, if the Bull, well, we'll have to see what the Bulls do. But if the Wizards, like you said, just got Alex Sarr, so if they can get like a Dylan Harper, maybe they can have
Right.
something with that duo. Like I said, I agree with everything you said. We're now, like you said, we're waiting on pretty much where Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball will end up, because it's not likely they probably play on Chicago for the full year. So we'll just have to wait on that. But all these
I will
teams,
say, on Chicago's behalf, that Josh Giddey did look solid in that game against the Team
yeah,
USA. He was getting to his spots, and sure, he was picking on one of the lesser defenders on the team in Anthony Edwards, but he was still getting to his spots, making some plays for Team Australia. So, maybe Josh Giddey's going to look better than we all thought. as far as what we last saw here in the playoffs. This is the next tier, and I made this tier up. You can say this is the rebuilding year tier, or just another year in the rebuilding process. But I'm going to say this is going to be a year. Just I want to see a step in the right direction for these teams. For San Antonio, you can argue this team can make a play-in push with Victor Wembanyama on the roster. They bring in CP3. Keldon Johnson and CP3 might run the bench unit. Of course, they also brought in Stephon Castle. Harrison Barnes is now in the mix as well. This is a team that quickly, over an off season, didn't make a lot of big additions, but they made a lot of, I guess, roster additions, right? Glue guy additions that could potentially put Wemby and these other young stars in a spot to make this team make that push to a play-in. Not necessarily saying they will be, but I just want to see this team take a step in the right direction. Same thing with the Pistons. They have a better coach for their core now. We're Cavs fans. We weren't the biggest fan of JB Bickerstaff and some of his rotational decisions and timeout, everything, right, on a contending team. But he's good at developing talent. At least that's what he was hired to do here in Detroit. I think he's a better coach for them outside of Monty Williams. For Portland, you looked terrible last year. I want to see this young core of Scoot, Anthony Simons, of course, Shaedon Sharpe. Guys like this, Donovan Clingan, even who had a crazy dunk yesterday. DeAndre Ayton, what are you going to do with him? Is he going to stay there long term? I want to see those guys take a step up this year. Not necessarily make a play-in push, but just look better on the court together, right? Toronto, you brought everybody back, but you also brought in guys like Jamal Sheed out of Houston. You brought in Davion Mitchell, guys like Bruce Brown, of course. I just want to see Scotty Barnes maybe take that next step into stardom, right? He's already made an all-star team. Maybe this year he can just prove, I'm a top 15, top 20 level player. Utah, what are we doing with Lauri Markkanen? But outside of that, you had arguably the best draft. Just take a step in the right direction. Your thoughts about these teams?
Yeah, I just got one quick question for you. Do you think Chauncey Billups is a coach for Portland, or do you think they need to find a better coach for this? I'm sorry about that. Do you think they need to find a better coach for this rebuild?
Yeah, no worries. I know you have nothing but Lambos and Corvettes and everybody else driving right behind you. But no, I think Chauncey it definitely has, I think he's a good mind for them, but I think he might be like a Jason Kidd, where he's probably better for a team that's contending, right? And
Yeah.
he can help these guys, I don't know if he's the right guy to help them develop. I mean, I'd be interested to see your thoughts. But as of right now, it seems like he's more of a Jason Kidd mode where he should be taking over a team that's ready to make that push. Well, not a rebuilding team. I'll say like a team like, for example, like Dallas. Like if he were to coach Dallas, I think he'd be better suited off there than Portland. But I'd be interested to see your thoughts. I mean, weirdly enough, they might be one of those teams that might just have to go carousel of those rebuilding coaches like Luke Walton, right? Might be a better coach
Right.
for them than Chauncey Billups. But your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was just asking because I know, I think this is Chauncey's third or fourth year going into it, and
Yeah,
they've much been around the exact same level record-wise. That even they even had Dame for a few of those years. Obviously, he was hurt and it wasn't much to play for. But there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement out of like you said, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. I mean, Shaedon Sharpe has gotten progressively better as you
right.
expect, but I think Portland fans probably feel he could be a little bit better. Scoot obviously had a horrendous start of the year last year. He kind of started getting it together about that midway, or I guess about All-Star break to finish that year out. And I just feel like like you said, Chauncey may not be the rebuilding coach, especially because he is a guard and Scoot is a guard. So I feel like that should have clicked off right away. But I guess you always give your coach another year, especially when you have the draft that you just have this year.
Yeah.
Spurs wise, though, like you said earlier, I think this team can make an honest play-in push. I think you have
They
Chris
vote. Yeah.
Paul. You bring him in, he's a vet. He's going to know how to guide these young guys. More importantly, he's going to know how to give Wembanyama more touches this year. Kind of let him be, kind of let the ball be in his hands. I mean, he averaged 21, 10, and like 4 or 5 almost. So it was
With 3.5 blocks a game.
that's absolutely insane. And like you said, Harrison Barnes, he's another vet. He's going to know who to give the ball to and when to give the ball to as well.
Black
when
Falcon.
Shot. And Pop, me and my dad, we were watching Pop at the summer league. We're like, man, this dude really has like no plans to retire. He's just chilling at the summer league with Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes. So as long as Pop's kicking it, then there should be solid. Pistons, like you mentioned, another one. JB, he's a great coach for a rebuild. To me, I wouldn't have paid Cade until after this year because this should have been his make or break year. And
Mhm.
I wasn't comfortable with giving him the. Obviously, I know Cade's really good. I wasn't comfortable with giving him the max though due to his injuries and how the team has been performing. These past couple of years. I know it's not his fault, but now there's really no excuses around him. They have Tim Hardaway Jr. Who else did they have?
Tobias
Josh Green,
Harris, they brought in.
Tobias Harris.
Josh Richardson stayed in Miami, but yeah, I think that's pretty much the summary of their offseason. They brought in Tobias, they brought in Tim Hardaway Jr.
I
Was it
think they might
Josh
have brought
Green as
in.
well?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, Josh Green. I think so.
They
They
got rid
run
of Killian Hayes, right?
it. Yeah, well, they got rid of him a while ago.
Yeah.
They brought in shooters, and that's been the biggest thing around Cade is he needs more shooters. I think this team has the amazing defense, a great, amazing versatility defense to make some really good,
They
really
lost
good.
James Wiseman. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay,
But I mean,
okay.
they already have some solid bigs. Yeah. So
Right. So I think this team can really make a push in the play-in if they take a step in the right direction. Same as the Raptors. I think the Raptors team, like the Raptors are never really like really bad. It feels like
no, they're like
they're
the
either
Pacers.
like mediocrely bad or they're kind of like in that 6 or 7 range. They're always in like either 9 and 10 or 6 and 7. It's no in between. That's what I feel like, as a Cavs fan about the Raptors. Scotty Barnes, like you said, I think Scotty Barnes is going to be due for another breakout, another step in his progression. Especially after being an all-star. And like you mentioned earlier, with Larry Markkinen, if they can figure out if they're going to trade him or keep him, if they keep him, they have a legit shot at, well, maybe not to play in, but they won't be as bad. Like you said, they're stepping in the right direction. I think honestly, you could probably trade him, get some draft compensation because what you could trade him for is like, I don't know if you saw the trade package for the Warriors. Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, pods and first, like obviously all
It's
of that won't
insane.
be in a trade. But if you get some of that in return, you're not really like you're bringing in pieces to kind of make up for that Lowry loss. So
Yeah.
I still argue you're kind of if not in a better position, in the same position. So
Yeah, I don't think his value is ever going to be higher. I mean, last year he had like what 20 points, 9 rebounds. He gave you 50% from the field, 40% from three on crazy volume there in Utah. And he also, of course, brings the rim protection. One of the most underrated players in the league. But I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is one player in this division or this group of teams here? I'll give you a second here to think about it. Whether if it's young, in the prime of their career or old, who's one player that you're most excited to watch this year? It could be someone like just like Wemby. To me, I have an underrated guy. Maybe not the most excited, but I'm excited to see how a guy like Jaden Ivey plays this year. Right, talented young scorer, a guy that hasn't really taken the next step yet. But I'm interested to see how he can bounce back this year with JB now helping develop him. But your thoughts here? What's one player you're kind of excited to watch here? Maybe not the most excited, but of course I think we can both agree that's Wemby. But outside of Wemby, who's someone you're excited to watch in this group of teams?
I can name you about two or three. Stephon Castle,
Yes.
San Antonio. I think I really want to see. He's looked pretty good in the summer league to me, just with eye test, decision making, mobility. He's looked pretty good to me. And I want to see how he fits with Wimby and Keontae George. Believe it or not, I don't know why.
He was killing it, dude.
I don't know why. I really want. I just want to see. I think he's one of those guys where not a lot like he got kind of lost in that Wemby draft situation. Like, oh, Wemby is in this draft, and then you forget like a guy like Keontae George is drafted, and he had a pretty good year. I think he kind of it feels like Keontae George is kind of like the type of players that Utah has just been getting, like Colin Sexton, Jordan
Mhm.
Clarkson, Keontae George. He's kind of falling down like that same type of a tier list, but it's fun to watch him progress on a team like this where you have like Walker Kessler and some of these other young guys. So I don't know why Keontae George came to mind, but he did, and
I'm running with
as
it.
long as he can shoot 5 of 21 and have 30 points somehow.
Next, we'll move into some play-in teams or some just first-round exits. Teams that are too good to tank, but again, they're not bad enough or they're bad enough to compete, right? They're not good enough to compete, but they're not bad enough to tank, is what I was going for there. These are just teams that are just kind of, again, in purgatory, middle of the road. I'm not seeing much out of them. The Hawks, of course, made a big trade. Sometimes I think less is more, and I think that might be the strategy they're taking, trading away a guy like DeJounte Murray. But outside of that, they had a solid all season. And then just getting into it, I think if we want to look at the Western Conference teams like the Warriors, I know that their roster technically looks a lot better than last year from top to bottom, even though they lost a guy like Klay Thompson. When you think about the roster, you see no Klay Thompson, it's like, man, they got worse. The Warriors don't got a chance now, just because that's what we've known for the last 10 to 15 years. But of course, their roster, I think, is overall better now. Now, when it comes to the Rockets, this is a team where they're not like the Warriors and the Hawks, where it's kind of like the end of a chapter in those franchises. For the Rockets, I think they can make a play-in push this year. Of course, they have the grittiness, they have the superstar level players in Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. I'm excited to see what they can do this year. Of course, they still have the veteran leadership of Fred VanVleet and, of course, Dylan Brooks. Interested to see how they can bounce back from their injuries and play together in year number 2 there in Houston. And then the Clippers might be the most shocking one that I have here, but I don't know. I guess I'm just over this era of Clippers basketball where Kawhi Leonard, look, he's coming back, and is he going to be healthy? I mean, that's the biggest question. This reminds me of a team from 2 years ago when Paul George was hurt, and it was just Kawhi and Russell Westbrook, taking on the Suns there in the first round. But is he going to be healthy? That's the biggest question. If he can't stay healthy, to me, they're a first round exit. They're probably going to finish as a team that goes through the play in, makes it, but loses to a 1 or 2 seed. Any thoughts about these teams?
No, I just want to say I'm really high on the Rockets. Everybody out there, I'm claiming it now, but I probably mentioned it last year. I like the way the Rockets kind of their team is, I guess, is the best way to say it. Like, they have that mix of vets
Yes.
and young guys. Obviously we saw Jalen Green pop off last year after the Sengun injury, but hopefully the next step in that development will be how if they can both play to their max when they're both on the court, when they're both playing at the same time. Because Jalen Green kind of he dibbled and dabbled when Sengun was healthy. I'm sorry, I don't know. I couldn't get my words when he was healthy. And then once he got hurt, it's kind of like he took that. He had the ball in his hands a lot more, so he could kind of create his own shot more. So they need to be able to coexist on the court at the same time. And also, I'm really big on Jabari Smith. I think he obviously kind of, he hasn't probably had to start to his career as he's wanted, but I just I feel like his work ethic is there. I feel like every offseason you can see him somewhere trying to learn from the great ones, trying to learn more about the game. And, I feel like it's in due time, he should definitely have his kind of like breakout season, kind of put him on the map and show everybody why he was the 3rd pick, and a potential number 1 pick a couple of years ago. So I feel like a breakout season is coming for Jabari Smith Jr.
Do you think their ceiling is a first round exit, or do you think it could potentially be farther than that? To me, I think they're in a first round exit seems harsh, but I'm saying like they could just be one of those teams that are fun. Maybe they, get out of the play in and they have, a 6 to 7 game series with a Denver or something. I think they could be that team next year, or maybe they have a 6 or 7 game series with like the Thunder, and everyone's like, oh shoot, they're like the Timberwolves from 2 years ago. They're about to take that next step.
I think when you look at it, if you would have asked me last year before the season, I would have. If you said are the Pacers ceiling a first round exit, I would have been like, yeah.
Right.
Houston, there are teams who made the playoffs last year that they could probably beat, or they're going to be able to beat in the coming years. And like you said, I feel like they'll be able to eventually beat the Clippers, the Lakers when LeBron retires or however that goes. The Clippers, Lakers. I'm trying to think who else. Who was the 6th seed? The Suns.
The 6th, yeah.
I don't know if they'll beat the Suns just because of that star power.
I mean, how many big names do they have? That's all the Suns like to do is name chase.
Yeah, that is true. But I feel like I guess first round exits right now is probably their ceiling. Yeah, because I feel like they give those teams a fit. Are they going to beat any of these teams like this year? Probably not. But in the coming years, I think so.
Quick question here. I'll ask you the same thing as last time. I can imagine your answer, right? So I'll save that player for you. But out of these 4 teams, what's one player you're just excited to see next year? To me, again, maybe not the most excited, but a guy like Jalen Johnson or even an AirPods. He's just one of those weird guys that I like. Guys like, the Kyle Lowrys of the world and Mike Conleys of the world. AirPods is very fun to watch, actually, and I'm excited to see him develop. And the only other guy I'll throw out there is even though I, kind of hate to say it, Jonathan Kuminga, even though we have our debates about him, I want to see his development. But what's the one player out of these four that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I was gonna go with Jalen Green or Jonathan Kuminga.
Wow.
Those two.
We're not talking about the EuroLeague legend, the
Oh,
former Cavalier,
I don't think I'm.
Kevin Porter. He
Oh
got,
yeah, I kind of
yeah,
forgot. I kind of
yeah.
forgot that he got signed by the Clippers. That is crazy. I got to
It's
dial
easy to
down
forget him.
my KPJ fandom to the wind's not going to blow over this. So I gotta dial that down and kind of hide in the shadows.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
probably yeah. Honestly, I'll change it from Jalen Grant. Jabari Smith Jr. and Jonathan Kuminga. I don't think people realize Jonathan Kuminga averaged about 17 points on some good shooting splits last year. I think this year is that step up. Clay's not there. He knows he's going to get those. He's going to get more shots, more opportunities. And they're really looking for him to step up. I think he could be a two-way monster and really be able to help Steph out on that. I think he'll be able to bring a balance to Steph's play style. Believe it or not, I think he'll
Yeah.
be able to be a force on the interior as well as decent shooting to allow Steph to get more. I mean, it's always going to be hard for Steph to get open perimeter shots, but
Right. But
I
yeah,
think with Pods and Buddy Hield being there, that'll also work out for him too. And like I said earlier, Jabari Smith Jr. I really like his work ethic, and I think he came into the league with a lot of good tools. I think it was just hard for him at first because his guards were Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green.
can't get much worse than that.
Yeah, you can't. You're not really want to get the ball a lot of times, so you got to throw up shots when you get it. But I think Fred VanVleet being there is really good for them. I think Amin Thompson being there as well,
Yeah.
being able to do that ball and play defense is really good for him. So I think Jabari Smith Jr. should have a breakout year coming up here soon.
Moving over to the We'll Make It Interesting tier. These are teams like the Pacers from last year. These are teams that you can see losing in the play-in. I guess if everybody stays healthy in the league, but you can also see these teams making it to the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals. These are teams that just have the rosters to make it far. Again, we're making it, or we'll make it interesting. In the Eastern Conference, I have the Magic, the Pacers, and the Miami Heat. You can never count out the Miami Heat, even though their roster in their offseason was subpar to say the least. The Pacers, of course, they're fast, right? They get up and down, and they're only going to get better now that Ben Mathurin is coming back into the mix. Don't forget, that's a 20-point per game scorer, even in his young career. The Magic, of course, I'm surprised they didn't get out the first round last year with how badly the Cavs wanted to give them the series, seemingly. But Paolo Banchero, great first impression as far as his playoff career. Franz Wagner got a bag. Did he deserve it after that game seven? I don't know. But this is a young core that's coming back, hungrier than ever. And I see no reason why they can't sneakily be like the Grizzlies from a few years back, where we think, okay, there might be 2 years away, but they end up being like a 1 or 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. That is how talented this Magic team is. And again, they only filled every hole that they needed with a guy like KCP and others. I'm excited to see for these three teams. What's the one team you're most excited out of these three?
Most excited. I probably go to Magic. I like the
Yeah.
KCP pickup. Like you said, I really thought, especially after that game 6 where Donovan Mitchell dropped 50 points in every single point in the fourth quarter. I really thought the Magic were about to take that series. And to be honest, I think they would have played the Celtics pretty well. I think it would have been a close 4-game sweep.
Yeah.
Maybe 5 games, but I thought they would have played the Celtics pretty well because of their defense. Obviously they can be a little bit stagnant on offense, and I think that's what ultimately ended up getting them. But you bring in KCP to knock down a perimeter 3, and that guards the other team's best perimeter defender. Like you mentioned, Franz got a bag. Paolo's only going to get better. I really think this Magic team is on the up and up, and I'm not just saying that because I'm in Orlando right now, but I really do believe that.
If you see
And
Paolo, let me know. I might have to fly down there.
I'm just going to take a picture and post it to Instagram, and everybody's going to
Okay.
find
All right.
it at the same time.
But in the Western Conference, some of the same teams, right? These are teams that, for the Pelicans, of course, if they're healthy, they could be a top 4 seed like we saw for 80% of the regular season last year before everything just kind of fell apart second half of the year and they kind of fell down into the play-in. But I think, of course, I'll say this, Bakari. I don't know who their center is. They still don't have a center on the roster. Zion is currently their center.
What about the rookie?
Who do they draft?
Uh, uh, I can't. I don't think I know how to say his name.
Regardless, what I'm saying is they don't have at least a proven center on the roster, at least of right
Yeah.
now. So you're running a lineup where is Zion the five? Now, where you're going to have a lineup of like DeJounte at the one, CJ at the two, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and Zion. I think that could be an interesting death lineup for you. But outside of that, what are we going to do at the center position? I don't know if Zion, he's a great rebounder, but like if you put him against the Kings are going to have 30 more rebounds than them, right? I'm just interested to see what they can do with that roster, right? But they have the talent to make it far, no matter who their center is what I'm getting at. And then for the Kings, you bring in Debo, DeMar DeRozan, of course. Now you have a big three of course, De'Aaron Fox, Sabonis, and DeMar DeRozan. I'd have to get your thoughts on that here really quickly. And then Keegan Murray still has the best crowd chant in the league. They still have Keon Ellis, still have Malik Monk, who they brought back, who everyone thought he was gone for sure. He comes back to Sacramento. And now you have a team where you really only gave up Harrison Barnes and you brought in DeMar DeRozan. The Kings, to me, with their defense, with their head coach, I think they can make it interesting, just like the rest of these teams. And again, what I mean by that is making it to the Eastern or Western Conference Finals. Your thoughts about these Western Conference teams here?
Yeah. Pelicans better go sign Tristan. He's proven. Hey, he's going to give you high motor in the 5 minutes he plays a game.
I'm gonna look up. Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, I think if Zion's going to play big for the Pelicans, I don't know how well that's going to work. Obviously, you think about how many points they can score on offense with that spacing, but I think it's well known by now that Zion has been below average on defense, average to below average on defense. He kind of just seems like he either doesn't try as much as his physical skills allow him, or he just doesn't put as much effort into it. But I think that offensive fit is going to be really good for the Pelicans. Their worry is just going to be defense. And for the Kings, like you mentioned, that DeMar trade, it kind of puts them in that will make it interesting tier. Obviously, we saw what happened last year in the play-in. It's an interesting fit. I'll give it that. It's an interesting type of team dynamic. DeMar DeRozan, De'Aaron Fox, and Sabonis. However, it's not one of those moves where I'll look at it and it puts them in like obviously they're in this tier for a reason. It doesn't really put me in that contending tier, I guess. I think it's a solid move, but I think it's a move that'll more so keep them afloat in the Western Conference for some years. I don't know about ever getting to a finals, and I don't know how many more insanely productive seasons you're going to get out of DeMar. DeMar's always going to be decent, but we could see him start to be more of a 16 point per game score instead of a 24 or things of that nature. I like the move for the Kings. It just doesn't budge me super far one way or the other.
So these are the five big men that the Pelicans have on the roster. By the way, ESPN has Trey Murphy listed as a shooting guard. I'll leave it there. But on the Pelicans roster, I'm going to give you five centers. Tell me who you want to be the starting five for the Pelicans. You have Jeremiah Robinson Earl. You have Xylon Cheatham. You have Jamal Cain. Daniel Tice, who I forgot. I'm sorry. Daniel Tice signed on the roster. He's probably the most credible center they have. And then Yves Missy, which is the 20-year-old rookie. He's actually the tallest center they have on the roster. They don't have a player on their roster over 6'10". So is the rookie the way to go, or is it Daniel Tice, I guess?
Honestly, I was seeing Jeremiah Robinson Earl.
Yeah, I mean, at least he's athletic. Kind of like Larry Nance kind of mold there. But again, I'll ask you the same question. Who's one player in this I guess group of teams that you're most excited to watch? I didn't even mention, I wanted to throw it out there. Bam is going to play the 4 this year to reports. Kel'el Ware is going to be playing the 5. So Bam at the 4, a little bit different there in Miami. But to me, I think it's Keegan Murray. Outside of like Paolo Banchero, the interesting one. I think to me it's Keegan Murray. I love, of course, the crowd chant, but just elite shooter. And same can be said about a guy like Herb Jones. I love his defense. He's such an underrated defender. And Trey Murphy as well. So Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and I'll go with Keegan Murray. Most excited to watch this year.
Yeah, I said Kel'el Ware. Kel'el Ware and honestly
I'm most excited to see Tyrese Halliburton, Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, but I think Kel'el Ware, like you just said, Bam's going to be playing at 4. I don't know if anybody's been watching or keeping track of Team USA. Bam has looked really good at the 4. AD has looked really good playing with Bam because I think when they're out there, they don't really count themselves as the 4 or the 5. They're just kind of two big men. So I think it kind of just helps their play style. But they both looked really good so far. They both look better than Joel Embiid, who's starting over both of them. But
We'll
I
talk
really
about
think
that later.
yeah, I really think Bam playing a 4 will kind of unlock his game. You might see him stretch his shooting out to the perimeter, outside the 3 ball a little bit. And I really think it'll expand his playmaking skills too. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Bam ends up being like an All NBA second team type of player this year, to go with that first team All NBA defense. And
Huh.
I think Kelly Ware has I mean, honestly, with the way this draft has looked so far, I think Kelly Ware has a good chance, especially if he can come in and contribute to win like a Rookie of the Year award.
Yeah.
Definitely first team All Rookie under that Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra system, and the Heat demand the best out of their players. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised.
Definitely worth a $2 bet. The next tier here, we're going to talk about playoff teams. These are teams that are, in my mind, good, just not great, right? They might make the Eastern Conference Finals, but there's certain feeling that you have about certain playoff teams. As Cavs fans, I'll admit I have it about the Cavaliers. We're going to put up a fight. We might win a series or two, but we're not true contenders. And that's kind of this tier of teams, except for one. There's one team that I regret putting on this tier, and it'll stick out like a sore thumb. But in the Eastern Conference, I think it's the Sixers. Big threes usually take a year to mesh and to mold together. And for that reason alone, I understand this team is deep as you can be as an Eastern Conference team. I understand they have the reigning MVP. Well, he would have been the back-to-back MVP. The big threes usually need a year to mesh, and that's the kind of what I'm going off there for the Sixers. For the Bucks, you have Doc Rivers. That's my point there. For the Cavaliers, you're good, just not great. That literally is the perfect summary for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Out of these Eastern Conference teams, who are you most excited to watch? And of course, just over your overall thoughts about these teams.
If I'm not being a biased Cavs fan, Philly. I think I'm going to disagree with you for Philly when you say the big threes need to mesh at least take a year, only because of this situation. I think Paul George is he knows he's going to be that second fiddle. He just played 4 or 5 years in LA where he knew he was going to be the second fiddle. Paul George has called himself a Robin to people's Batman, which I think Paul George needs to give himself a little bit more respect.
He does.
He's definitely not that. He's not a career sidekick. He's been a superstar before. He's almost won MVP himself. I think Paul George went into this situation knowing he's not going to be the best player. He's just coming in to help the best player win a ring. And obviously this past series, we saw Tyrese Maxey and Jalen Green, Joel Embiid have their best playoff series by far together. And you add Paul George to that makes a player who's taken a sorry Clippers team to the conference finals, and it's just only because Kawhi was hurt. And the second best player was Terrence Mann. I think this team could make some real noise this year. I think you look at it and you say, well, why not? Why can't we beat the Celtics are the standard? Why can't we beat the Celtics with what we have out there? So that would be to be determined.
Yeah, I mean, my only what I've been saying about the Celtics is I think there's only 3 teams that have a legitimate chance to beat them in a 7-game series. That's the Sixers, that's the Bucks, and that's the Nuggets, because they have that dominant big man. Right? When you have a Joel Embiid, when you have a Giannis, when you have a Jokic, to me, unless you have one of those dominant big men, I don't know if you can really beat the Celtics in a 7-game series. So I mean, again, so we want these teams to compete, but I think for Joel Embiid, someone who's never been out the first round, or the second round, excuse me, I think this year you'd walk away at least a little bit happy if you can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And that's kind of where I think they're not their ceiling, but I think that's the likely scenario. Again, just in my eyes. I have to wait and see, but I will say I don't know if there's a team deeper outside of the Celtics than the 76ers with their off season. Now,
I want to add something real quick. My bad.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I will say, as a Cavs fan, we watched basically Evan Mobley go out there single-handedly the end of that Cavs Celtics series. And, I don't think by any stretch of the imagination, people are out here calling Evan Mobley an elite big man. He might get there at some point. But we watched what a decent big man was doing to Al Horford and Luke Kornet. And he also couldn't shoot. He doesn't have the shooting ability as Joel Embiid, the offensive prowess as Joel Embiid. But it's like, I really, like you said, I think with a dominant big is going to be able to exploit an older Al Horford and Luke Kornet coming off the bench. I think seeing that blueprint is definitely, I know where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah. Moving over to the Western Conference, we have the one team that sticks out like a sore thumb, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I'll talk about that in a second. The Lakers, they're old, right? This is a team that always seems to be good, not great. That seems like to be the perfect moniker for the Lakers over the last couple of years, really since the bubble. And then the Phoenix Suns, they have the star talent. They have $150 million wrapped into their big three. But after that, what really else do they have? And again, they have the talent. They can make it interesting. But this is a team that might win one, maybe two playoff series. Nothing more than that. For the Timberwolves, they are on here, and this is the one team that I mentioned if that I regret. If I can move them into the next tier, I would. So kind of exclude them. This is a team that has a rising superstar, a top 10 player in Anthony Edwards. They have basically one of the best supporting cast around a superstar in the league. I think I just put them here because six would have been an even number. But if I can move them into the next tier, that's what I would do. So your thoughts on the five teams outside of them here in the good, not great tier?
Yeah, I completely get it with all of these teams. Obviously, none of these teams have really made like I mean, Philly obviously made moves to kind of at least go further than they've been
Right.
in playoff years. So you got to give them that. None of these other teams, either like you said, you exclude the Timberwolves, or even if you were to include the Timberwolves, haven't made any like any moves. The Bucks,
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
mean,
And
Rob
they
Dillingham and Terrence Shannon have been killing it, but that's summer league.
and I completely forgot Malik Beasley went to the Pistons. So the Bucks lost Malik Beasley. The Cavs got rid of JB Bickerstaff. They got Kenny Atkinson. From everything as a Cavs fan, everything I've heard so far, I feel like Kenny Atkinson is really going to be able to unlock some players. But even then, that's just a coaching move. We didn't get anybody that we really needed. The Lakers, like I mentioned, D'Angelo Russell picked up the option on this deal, and they're going to try and trade him.
Right.
D'Angelo Russell is one of those players, you might not get the same value you're giving away for him. I think D'Angelo Russell goes to another team and plays even better than he's been playing with the Lakers, which is he's just been inconsistent with the Lakers. And I think if he's on a smaller market team, he's going to do well.
Yeah.
Phoenix,
Yeah.
Phoenix, they got Monte Morris, right?
Yes. Yeah. They signed him on a vet minimum. So
Yeah, they so you get Monte Morris. I still, for the life of me, don't know why you traded for Brad Beal. I said that last year. I just feel like Brad Beal. He's not a guard. He's not a big. What does he bring to your two wing-oriented players? And, he doesn't provide extraordinary playmaking. He doesn't, he's a scorer, but he's taken a step back because of injury woes or whatnot. He doesn't even bring defense. So, I still don't know what you got out of that, but you're paying three guys $150 million, like you said. So you're going to have to bank on their star power alone to get those three players better be putting up 150 million or 150 points. That's all I gotta say. If you
I
pay them
mean, they extended Grayson Allen, of course, and Royce O'Neal. And now those are solid pieces, I think, that fit around this core. But Yusuf Nurkic, I'm not sold on, and of course Monte Morris is solid, but can he be a lead guard on a championship team? That's yet to be seen. But the idea that I've thrown around here, Bakari, and I know it's not going to happen because the Suns don't have a credible name at the point guard like Russell Westbrook or D'Lo, one of those guys. The idea that I've thrown out there is that Bradley Beal comes off the bench, but he's not a bench player, right? He just starts the first 5 or so minutes on the game coming off the bench. He's still going to play 30, 35 minutes a night, but, to have Monte Morris start the game, get Devin Booker and Kevin Durant going, right? Get them in their spots, get them hot, and then Bradley Beal can come in and, as if there wasn't already a lot of eyes and attention, given out to D Book and Kevin Durant, here comes Bradley Beal, a guy that averaged 30 one season. That's kind of been the idea that I've thrown around, but defensively, they're just never going to be a great team. So that's why I have them in the good, not great tier. But what do you think about Bradley Beal being a bench player here in that scenario?
I like it a lot. I mean, honestly, I still think if you start Monte Morris, D Book, Kevin Durant, Royce O'Neal, and Yusuf Nurkic and bring Bradley Beal off the bench, even with that, I still think that works out. You still have Bradley Beal, Grayson Allen. I think they signed Bol back. I'm trying to think more bench pieces they have. You bring in some other bench pieces or whoever they have on the team. That still works. Yeah, that still works really well. Obviously, on the offensive end, you're not going to be getting a whole lot out of the defensive end, but that, not starting Bradley Beal also kind of maximizes their defense you can have out there. I mean, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant aren't the best defenders, but they can defend if they have to. But Kevin Durant doesn't get enough credit for being better at defense later in his career than he probably was a little bit early in his career now that he knows the importance of it. Royce O'Neal, he's probably their best perimeter defender. Devin Booker he understands that he has to
Yeah.
play defense. Like, those are guys that can do it. So I think that maximizes their defense as well. I like Brad Beal coming off the bench. Is he going to do that? Probably not. Are the Suns going to do that? Probably not. But I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll throw out there is, or well, one of the last things is I forgot to mention that Pat Bev is still a free agent, so that's another player the Bucks lost. But Giannis is Giannis. That's the reason why they're here. They still have that big three, and I think that big three has something to prove going into next year with other guys like Bobby Portis as well. Brooke Lopez, of course, is a free agent, but he's gonna probably go back to Milwaukee. Or I think he's on the last year of his deal. I don't know if he's a free agent or I think he's on one more year in his deal. Of course, the Lakers. I'll ask you this quick question here. Scale of 1 to 10. How likely can LeBron get his fifth ring this season? Because we got to ask, we're Cavs fans. If the Cavs don't win it, to me, I'd love to see LeBron go out on top. If this is his last year. Of course, he's in his last Olympics right now. But personally speaking, if I had to answer first, 7 is off the table. That seems to always be like a cop-out answer. They have
I
such a
feel
deep
like
roster. They have LeBron James. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. Now, I don't think they're in the same tier as like the Nuggets or the Celtics, but I think LeBron might come into this year, playing 110%. If 7
well, I
seems
was just
like
gonna
a
say, like,
cop-out
I think
answer.
if they can end up beating the Nuggets, if they can end up beating the Nuggets, they have a fair shot. I guess the Nuggets did lose KCP. Um,
It's like I think there's a 6 or an 8.
I
I think that's where I'm at.
I think I'm going five.
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 I
Yeah.
like that numerology, right? 5 for LeBron's fifth. Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy.
The last thing I'll throw out there, of course, same question. Out of these 6 teams, we'll say 5 teams. Well, Timberwolves will be in the next tier. What is one player or a couple players that you're most excited to watch for this season?
Evan Mobley. Uh,
Yes, he was my answer.
Evan Mobley and Tyrese Maxey probably.
Yes,
Uh,
I
I,
go ahead.
I
I'm sorry.
no, you're fine. I think Evan Mobley. This is a player who's every year defensively he gets assigned tough tasks, and he was a defensive player. He was a first team all defensive player his second year in the league. I think JB Bickerstaff kind of stalled that development as well as kind of Donovan Mitchell being added to the mix. So it kind of like turned from a winning standpoint to development standpoint. But I think with Kenny Atkinson and a new coaching regimen coming in, I think you're really going to see an unlocked version of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley this year. I really think that they'll make big strides in their play style to kind of support Donovan Mitchell and kind of push this Cavs team to go a little bit further. And Tyrese Maxey, this is a player. He just averaged 26 and 6, I think, or something like that. He's always been a
Crazy.
great shooter. He shot like 40% or close to 40%, like his first 3 years in the league, which is crazy. I don't think everybody knew that, but he's really showed he can be a lead guard. I think he had a 6-point swing in his scoring. Why can't he get another 6-point swing in his
Right.
scoring?
Yeah.
If he can be that second option for this Philly team and Paul George goes to that third option, not only is Tyrese Maxey a very efficient second option, Paul George is a very efficient third option. So you're really going to.
I think they could switch on some nights too. If one has the goal and one doesn't, right? You touched on Evan Mobley. He was going to be my answer for these 6 teams. Outside of that, I have some cop-out answers, some basic middle of the line answers. Guys like Giannis, right? I want to see him come out and have that season where it's like, hey, I'm the best player in the world. I've just been hurt. LeBron, of course, for the nostalgia factor. But outside of that, Evan Mobley would definitely be the guy. Dalton Connect too, even though it's just summer league. I think he can actually get into this rotation and maybe have like an Austin Reeves kind of year, right, where he breaks out onto the scene and all the Lakers fans love him. Let's get into the
I'm
title
throwing
contenders.
D-Book in that last one too.
D-Book, yes. I last year I had him as a top 10 player. This year, that is to be determined. We'll have to talk about that. Title contenders. In the East, we'll keep it simple. Boston, deepest team in the league. It doesn't look like they can be beat in a 7-game series. They're bringing everybody back. So if they're healthy, something to watch out for. The Knicks, the power of friendship. They've completed this Villanova Knicks. And I'm surprised they didn't want to go after a guy like Kyle Lowry, right? A defensive wing, but also or defensive guard, excuse me, was a free agent. He's not anymore, but he was a free agent and he went to Villanova. That would have been a guy that would have been funny if the Knicks picked him up. But this is the team that is unlike any other team in the league. And it's because not only do they have the power of friendship, but their star players are willing to take pay cuts outside of OG Anunoby. Jalen Brunson left $100 million on the table. Mikal Bridges is looking to do the same exact thing. Josh Hart has already said that his next contract, when it's up, he wants to get paid, but it doesn't have to be top dollar. This isn't, I don't think we've seen this in a long time where you have this many quality players willing to take pay cuts to just play together and to win at a high level. The Knicks, very interesting team here. Which team are you most excited to watch for next season out of these two? These are my only two Eastern Conference contenders, really, next season.
Honestly, I want to say the Knicks, but I'm also going to give you the player that I want to watch. Like it's kind of like a
Deuce McBride. I like Deuce McBride a lot, but go ahead.
It's going to sound crazy. Jason Tatum. I think Jason Tatum is going to come back next season with more to prove. Believe it or not, I think he's going to come back next season and say, "Well, people thought we shouldn't have won a ring because of how we got there, the team we played when we were there, and I didn't win Finals MVP." Jason Tatum has looked like comfortably a top 3 player on Team USA, along with Anthony Edwards and
Anthony Davis.
And Anthony Davis, comfortably top 3. I think coming off of that ring, coming off of Team USA, he's going to come back next year, and I think he's going to prove to people, that this is what he does. This is he wins basketball games. He may not do it the way you like it, but he is one of the best players in the league. He's top 5, top 6 player in the league. The Knicks, I just want to see, I think it'd be hilarious. Cast Phantom aside, to see the Knicks win a championship. And honestly, they deserve it. They're taking pay cuts. They want to play basketball the right way. They want to win the right way. And you can't really fault a team for wanting to do that. They're all friends off the court. So it just feels like this is a special team. Not to mention, you still have Julius Randle coming back. I think Julius Randle got to watch from that backseat last year and see, well, maybe I got to change my play style up to play with these guys. And, we can really do something special. So I can't wait to see this.
Who has the better defense? Now, I will say this, but when I give you a second to think, the Celtics historically last year were technically, statistically, a top 3 basketball team of all time. As crazy as that might sound, we just witnessed one of the most dominant teams in NBA history last year based on the advanced statistics. But for the Knicks, they have the defense. Of course, the Celtics bringing back everybody. Who do you think has the better defense between these two? It feels like it's going to be the Pistons versus Pistons in 2004 when these teams match up. It's tough because both teams have so much versatility. It's like on one hand, the Knicks might have a little bit more versatility, but like the Celtics have probably the best defender out of these two teams in Jrue Holiday. So
I'd probably say the Celtics though. Only because when I compare it matchup wise, Jalen Brunson isn't the best defender. Josh Hart isn't the best defender. He's a good rebounder and dirty work guy, but individual defender, he's not the best at. I think for your two superstars on the Celtics, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they are outstanding defenders for the tier of player they are. Both of them are. Right. Especially Jaylen Brown. We saw Jaylen Brown kind of knock Kyrie off his game in the finals. Luka struggled a little bit, but I think that was a team effort. Derek White obviously is probably the second best defending guard in the league next to Jrue Holiday. You have 2 of those guys on the same court. We didn't even see Kristaps Porzingis get a lot of playing time and really impacted the game defensively, but I feel like he's a better defender than Mitch a better interior defender than Mitch Robinson. Maybe not a rebounder or physical presence, but a defender.
I think
the Knicks have more versatility, like you said, but I think the Celtics defend better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I will say this. I have technically 4 Western Conference teams here, 5 with the Timberwolves, but I'll say this. I think these 2 Eastern Conference teams are comfortably my top 4 as far as title contenders next season. Let's get into the rest of the West. Wow. That's I don't want to finish that statement. The Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks, we'll start there because these are the 2 teams that I think are actually, surprisingly, on the bottom of my Western Conference contenders if I had to talk about this tier of teams. So your thoughts about the Timberwolves, the Mavericks, they matched up in the playoffs last year. Luka got the upper hand, but still a very tough and competitive and close series. It literally could have won either way if Luka didn't hit some shots down the stretch. Your thoughts on those 2 teams? Of course, Dallas, they brought in Klay Thompson. They brought in, of course, some other quality pieces. And then when you have Minnesota, they're bringing back the same core, but Anthony Edwards looks like he's taking another step in the top 5 level.
Yeah. It's going to sound crazy, right? And it's going to sound crazy because the Mavericks gained Klay Thompson.
Najee Marshall as well.
Honestly,
We got him. But
I don't know. Like, they just made the finals. And so technically, I guess by that point, they should be title contenders. If there was a tier in between the last tier we did and this tier,
they don't feel like contenders.
yeah, I'd put them there because they lost, like they lost Derrick Jones Jr., they lost Josh Green, they lost Tim Hardaway Jr. Now those guys aren't, by any stretch of the imagination, you can afford to lose those guys, but they were vital to you getting there in the first place. You gained Klay Thompson, which Klay Thompson is coming off his worst season and his worst game ever. And you're paying him. I know you saw the report. He's guaranteed small forward. He's guaranteed minutes.
So I mean that starting lineup is solid. You got Luka, Kyrie, Klay, PJ, and we'll say Derek Lively probably.
It is. I just think I just feel like I don't know. We'll get to some of these other teams later. I just feel like from those teams they might lack a little bit. And with the Timberwolves, like you said, the Timberwolves they lost Slow-Mo. But
that's it, really.
Yeah, they lost Slow-Mo. That's really it. You could say they didn't make a lot of moves, but like you said, just watching Team USA, Anthony Edwards looked like he ascended to another. I was watching the scrimmage yesterday, and even the last scrimmage. I'm like, Anthony Edwards looks like 10 times better player than he did when we last saw him on the court. I don't know. He's really been in the gym since they lost, and it's evident.
It's like Anthony Edwards, like you said, it looks like he's a different player. It looks like he has a lot more confidence coming off of that playoff exit. It's crazy to see. It really looks like he's gonna enter that top 5 conversation in just a year or two. But any last thoughts about the Mavericks and Timberwolves? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I won't be surprised, and this is, it's probably a kind of crazy take. I won't be surprised if Anthony Edwards ends up being a 50-40-90 club player.
Yeah, no, he has the potential, and he has all the defense, and I guess this team I think is going to be one of the most hungry teams next year, right next to the Knicks, next to maybe one of these teams we'll talk about here soon. The Timberwolves are going to be out for blood next season. But any player you're looking out for on the Timberwolves and or the Mavericks before we move on to the actual top 3 Western Conference contenders in my eyes?
I want to see Derek Lively. Honestly, I think Derek Lively can be an all-star in his role. I think he'll be like a DeAndre Jordan, maybe a couple of time all-star, really impact the defense. So I think Derek Lively is going to be solid. I'm high on Derek Lively.
As we play 2K off camera, of course, and my guard on 2K is this player. But Klay Thompson, as much as it's going to hurt my eyes and my eyes are going to bleed seeing that dude in another uniform, I want to see him bounce back. I want to see if he's going to be worth this big contract, and I want to see if he's going to be able to provide that spacing that Dallas paid for. Something I'm interested to see. He's going to be the scapegoat, no doubt about it, if this team doesn't win the finals next season. But getting into the top 3 Western Conference team, one team sticks out crazy, and could be because of the color on their logo, right? The throwback logo. But at number 3 out of these 3 teams is actually not that team. I think it's the Denver Nuggets. You lost a lot this offseason, and you didn't bring anything back to fix your problems from last year. Last year, it looked like the 2018 Cavaliers, because when Jokic went to the bench at any time throughout the season, the other team just went on a big run, and they didn't have that secondary score. Jamal Murray was hurt for the season, and if he wasn't hurt, he was inconsistent as can be throughout the entire season from start to finish. Sure, he had 2 game winners in the playoffs, and those were huge, but that was the highlight of his season. Outside of that, he was very inconsistent, and I think we get blinded by those 2 game winners in the first round of the playoffs. But again, you still have pretty much the same starting lineup, just no KCP, who was a key glue guy. But who's on the bench now? Zeke Naji and Christian Braun? Christian Braun's going to have to be a starter next year. Who's on that bench? I mean, maybe you go after a guy like Gordon Hayward. Maybe you can try and trade for a guy like Russell Westbrook, who they've been in talks with. Now, if that happens, I look at this team a little bit more. But at the end of the day, they still have a very solid core around the best player in ball and Nikola Jokic. So I'm going to give them contention tier. Outside of that, the Thunder, I mean, You can make an argument they won the offseason. They traded away Josh Giddey, a guy who couldn't space the floor, practically unplayable in that series against the Mavericks. You get Alex Caruso, an all NBA defender, and you also bring in Isaiah Hartenstein. So now you have a lineup where Chet is, like you talked about for I forget who we talked about 2 weeks ago, but imagine, or we talked about Wemby. Imagine Chet as an off-ball defender. He's so great on the ball. Imagine him as an off-ball defender, which he can play at the four. You can move J-Dub up to the three, have Caruso and Shea as the backcourt. This team is scary, top to bottom, and they're definitely on the horizon. They might be the next NBA's dynasty. Your thoughts about those two teams here, the Thunder and the Nuggets?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the Nuggets are there obviously because I think watching last year in the playoffs, just the whole season, I think everybody understands Nikola Jokic is the best player in the league. I think it was very evident, very apparent, especially in that Timberwolves series. Like you mentioned, he stepped off the court. That's when the Timberwolves will come back or make their mark or really assert their dominance on the game. The Thunder, like you mentioned, they could have won the offseason with just those two moves alone. Not to mention, I think they got to steal out of the draft. Nikola Topic. He tore his ACL. This was probably going to be a top 7, top 6 draft pick if he didn't get hurt. He brings a lot of what teams are looking for. He's a big playmaking guard. I think when he comes back healthy, don't be surprised if this Thunder team, it's a good situation to have if you can manage it, but don't be surprised if this Thunder team literally ends up like that 2012 Thunder team where they have so many stars, so many people to pay, where you're just kind of like, well, we might have to let one go. Obviously, I think teams learned from that situation 12 years ago and kind of manage that a little bit better now with contracts and everything now and the way the league is. But, that's how talented the young core on this Thunder team is. Shea is only getting better. Chet's only going to get better. J-Dub is a surprise for a lot of people. I don't think people expected him to be this good, but he is
I
this
didn't,
good.
to be honest with you. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
But he's fun to watch. Yeah.
He is. He could be a 20-point per game scorer this upcoming season. Obviously, you get Alex Caruso, just adds to that defense, that perimeter defense that you need. So, this is a crazy team on paper.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or the grizzly in the room. The Memphis Grizzlies. Look, this is a team that, if you take last year out of the picture, they've been an elite contender for the last couple of years that they've been healthy. Of course, the one year they were an underdog in the playoff series, made it an interesting first round against, was it the Warriors or I forget who at this point. It's been such a long time. They've been a fun playoff team.
I know they played the Timberwolves.
It could have been the Timberwolves regardless. This is a team that when Ja Morant's healthy, when Jaren Jackson's healthy, and this core is healthy, they are an elite basketball team. We even saw that when Ja Morant came back from his gun incident, right, in the middle of the season, this is a guy that, what did they win, like 4 out of their 5 games with Ja Morant when he came back and then he got hurt again? They win basketball games when Ja Morant is on the court. And you can argue if Ja Morant didn't get hurt last year and they went on to be a 4 seed, you could argue this dude is a top 10 player in the league. That's how talented Ja Morant is. And Desmond Bane, probably the most underrated shooting guard in the league. You have Jaren Jackson Jr., who came off of a DPOY season 2 years ago. This team has everything, I think, to go out there this year and to contend for a title. I think we both share that same sentiment, but if I'm wrong, please let me know. And your thoughts about the Grizzlies. I think they have it all to compete this year.
I think, I was a somewhat of a Ja hater. I'm not going to lie. Probably earlier in his career, just kind of like, but I think it was just kind of like that whole Memphis aura of that team. Dylan Brooks,
it's Dylan Brooks. Yeah.
Parade inside my city. Then not to mention Ja had the gun incidents. So obviously, that happened. But I think I probably, me and you probably now are probably some of the biggest Ja fans, Ja advocates now. I really want to see him do well this season. And the fact that I think it was proven to me that Ja is a superstar last year when he came back. And immediately, his impact on the court, his impact on winning, and it wasn't even just always stats. It's just his impact on the court. It just really changed that Memphis team for those few games he played. Obviously, he got hurt. Like you mentioned, this team has Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, Ja Morant, Marcus Smart. This team, did Luke Kennard come back or did he leave?
So he's not back yet, but they're basically they're expecting him to.
Okay, so you still have the team that people called elite, and you brought in a guy like Marcus Smart. Like
Zach Edey.
Zach Edey. I mean, we'll see how much playing time he gets this year, but it should be a decent amount. He's going to be able to contribute something.
Yeah, they don't have Steven Adams anymore, so maybe he starts from day one.
Yeah, maybe. And so, I think this Grizzlies team, I think it's well deserved that they're in a title contender spot because they can go out and beat anybody in the West, especially if they play exactly how we know they can play. And they have a chip they have a chip on their shoulder. You know that. This is a team that was very vocal about how good they felt like they could be. Obviously losing Dylan Brooks from that team 2 years ago, it hurts a little bit, but this team more than makes up in it. And I'm expecting Ja to actually come back and prove why can't he be a top 5 player in the league? I think that's the type of chip on his shoulder that Ja's going to come back and play with.
Yeah, like you talked about there, we're some of the biggest Ja advocates. So obviously that's going to be probably the top answer here. But any other players you're interested to look out for out of these 6 teams or so?
I say Chet. I say Chet.
J-Dub for me, right? And Klay Thompson, of course, we talked about. But but here's a quick recap. Of course, you see the title contenders, the good, not great, make it interesting. Play-in team / the first round exits, step in the right direction here, and the capture the flag tier. The last thing I want to talk about here, Bakari, before you get out of here and enjoy the rest of your vacation, I just want to, of course, ask you, this is a team that's not chasing gold, they're chasing greatness. And we've seen 2 showcase games so far. And I just want your overall thoughts. Of course, we played some of the top hitters, teams like, of course, Canada, then Australia, teams that we're going to have to compete with here in the coming weeks. But your thoughts, of course, Kevin Durant hasn't been healthy. But since it started, some players haven't played up to par. Guys like Joel Embiid. We had the whole Kawhi Leonard situation. But your thoughts on the current roster construction, and what do you think the starting lineup should be going forward? Most notably, we're talking about a guy like Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I think Bam and AD play really, really, really well together. I would be hesitant to kind of not have them play at the same time together. However, one of those 2 should probably start over Joel Embiid, just for the fit that they bring on the court, because I like the lineup that they started yesterday. LeBron, Steph, Jason Tatum,
Drew,
Anthony Edwards, and
Drew.
Joel Embiid.
Oh, Joel Embiid. Okay.
Drew didn't start.
Okay.
I did like that lineup. Obviously, Joel Embiid struggled, so you kind of hope that he can try and catch a stride before you have to really think about making a change there. Because the thing about it is, whenever LeBron's pretty much the point guard. Steph doesn't. He's exclusively off ball. He doesn't really take the ball up. It's LeBron or Anthony Edwards that are running the 2 guard, and Steph kind of does this thing to get an open off ball. Jason Tatum has looked really well yesterday. Ant obviously looked really well. LeBron looked really well. I think even the bench unit, I like that lineup they had. I think it was Drew, Devin Booker. Devin Booker, Bam, AD, and
Tyrese.
I think
Tyrese hit a couple big shots there late in the game.
Yeah, I believe it was Hallie who came in. Yep, and I like that lineup as well. I think Devin Booker has looked really good as well. And like I said, Bam and AD playing together kind of shows what they've been saying their whole career. We're not a 5, we're a 4. And so, they get a chance to show everybody that now. But I think Joel Embiid, they might have to bring him off the bench, unfortunately. I think it's hard for him to adjust to the FIBA rules because he's so on the NBA rules of how to score. He's got
that down pat.
What was that?
I said he's got that down pat. He knows how to drop 30 in the NBA, right? But FIBA's different.
He knows how he can get to the free throw line 12 times a game in NBA. It's going to be a little bit harder in the FIBA rules, so we'll have to see. But I've liked what I've seen so far. Obviously, it'll be another dynamic when Kevin Durant comes back.
Yeah, no, I kind of forgot how I forget the Australian center. So if you can remember, he was in the NBA for a couple years. But Dwight Powell looked a lot better in these FIBA rules, and I can't remember the Australian center, but
Jock Landale.
It was Jock Landale. These are guys that aren't getting. Jock Landale's getting, I guess, decent PT there for Phoenix, but outside of that, these are guys that should not be able to step on the same court as Joel Embiid, and they're doing a pretty good job at defending him. There's definitely an adjustment period for Joel Embiid, but my last remark here, and that's not really a question, is Kawhi Leonard left. They replaced him with Derek White over Jaylen Brown, over Darius Garland.
Donovan Mitchell.
Darius Garland. the best player on the Cavs.
Evan Mobley,
Evan Mobley. I mean, Jared Allen. Jared Allen. Why is he not here? Right?
Max Strus. I think if anybody,
Okay, Max Strus. I don't even know if he's American, to be honest with you. It seems like he'd be like Australian or something.
I mean, he played on the team and nobody batted an eye, so why can't Max Strus?
That's a very great point. But episode 191, I want to thank the BR family for putting this one out there. Bakari, of course, you're in the Sunshine State, so go enjoy it. But any last thoughts here? Again, thank you for your time joining the show. Episode 191. Any last thoughts?
No, it's always fun. Obviously, these are the rankings going into next season. It's going to be a fun season next year. I think there's going to be a lot of every year. There's a lot of shakeup, but this next year, no season is expected in the league, and we've had a new champion for every year since 2018 or 2019, right?
Yeah, since the Raptors.
The NBA is crazy, and we just love it for that.
Yeah, we're spoiled as NBA fans with the parity that we currently have. But
yeah,
that's going to do it. And we'll see you guys on, of course, tomorrow for some fantasy football. Thursday, of course, Amir joins the show for some Star Bench Cut. But until next week, stay happy, stay healthy. Get out of here.